So my name is Nasser. I'm with DAC Group. We are a digital full-service agency, and our focus is on location-based performance marketing. So what does that mean? We're going to talk a little bit about that today, and we're going to demonstrate it through a case study. But more importantly, we're going to talk about the impact it has on things like campaign efficiency, and most important of all, on revenue and profitability. So we're going to talk about winning hearts, minds, and wallets of digital consumers, and we're going to showcase a case study in this. And, you know, over the last day, we've been hearing a lot about the complexity of things like the consumer journey, fragmentation of the industry and the media channels, and it's hard. We get it. It's really hard to be relevant. It's really hard to win. It's really hard to drive revenue in a meaningful and measurable way. So how do you do this? Well, there's 5 principles that I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to touch on very briefly, and then we're going to get into the case study of how these were applied to drive that type of performance we're talking about. So these are the principles. The first idea is to break down silos, go mobile first, optimize the local channel, integrate channels and platforms, and finally, my personal favorite, remember the long term. So a couple of brief points on each of these. Let's start with breaking down silos. And let's use an example of somebody who knew something about breaking down walls. So one for the Gipper. Now, a little admission, I showed this image to a couple of people on my team the other day, and they had no idea what this was. And I immediately felt really old. But this idea of breaking down silos, you know, I was really struck by all of the conversation yesterday around authenticity of the brand and the experience. And one of the things that's really important in authenticity is connecting the back-end delivery of the business to the front-end promise of the branding, of the advertising, of the marketing. So is your business set up in a way that is able to cash the check that's written by your marketing? Because guess what? If it isn't, those user experiences end up in social environments, in digital environments, in the shape of ratings and reviews, which then impact our ability as marketers to do our work. So this is really important to remember, that the consumer does not care about our org chart. It's really sad, I know, but it's true. And what drives a lot of these ratings and reviews that happen in the moment? It's the shift to mobile. So we've been talking for many years, this is the year of mobile, this is the year of mobile. Well, that was last year. We've moved beyond that point. So this idea of being mobile first and thinking mobile first in everything that we do, whether it's mobile apps or mobile web experiences or campaigns, is really critical. And being mobile first means being relevant, being contextually useful, and rendering everything in a beautifully usable environment that just is seamless, just makes sense to that consumer in that moment. So when you do these things, that's where you're able to see sometimes doubling, sometimes tripling of conversion rates, which ultimately impacts revenue, of course. And getting mobile right starts with something very simple. It starts with optimizing the maps channel. Why? Because mobile is contextually a location-driven exercise. It's based on your GPS. And if we can narrow down that location and market to you as the consumer based on your physical proximity to my location, we drive performance. So what does this mean? It means that if you're a Firestone or a Nordstrom, a Bank of America or a State Farm, all of whom we work with, it means optimizing your name, address, phone number so you get consistency and accuracy in things like Google and the Google Maps channel, but it also means publishing simultaneously to all the other channels and platforms that matter, whether they're social channels or local directories. So you build this halo effect of citations that drives visibility and performance. Here's an interesting little thing that we found in optimizing this environment. We work with a very significant retailer who may or may not be up on the screen. And we found that by optimizing the maps channel, we were getting an enormous amount of traffic that was searching for the physical location, clicking on the maps listing, from there going to their website, and then buying stuff through e-commerce. This was incredible. We'd never thought that this would actually happen, but we were able to then drive back an ROI to this type of an activity. But optimizing the local experience is not just about the maps channel. It's about all the content that you own. So your web experiences, what contextually relevant content can you build that you own and that drives that local engagement. Because remember, that local engagement is about the last mile. This is an interesting project where Macy's delivers to 93 countries around the world, but doesn't have local brick and mortar locations beyond the United States. So this is a content play designed to localize messaging for people who are searching for their products at that local level internationally. But it's not just about building content, it's also about building campaigns. These campaigns need to be stitched together, because guess what? Consumers don't just exist in one silo. They don't just come through search or social or mobile or what have you. We have to stitch together all these different platforms, and to do that we need rock-solid analytics, because we recognize and understand that people are complex. And they take time to convert into whatever action that we want them to do. And this isn't just about having rock-solid analytics so we understand this journey to purchase, but by getting this attribution right, we can then test and experiment different types of combinations of media, of channels, and use that to drive ever-increasing performance. The final point, and this is my personal favorite, is planning for the long term. So as we talk about things like paid media and so on, there's always that temptation for short-term thinking. And we lose sight of the long term, and it's through long-term planning that we drive efficiency over time in an increasingly complex environment. So for those people who don't understand this reference, this is a famous experiment that was conducted in Stanford University, I want to say in the late 60s, early 70s, and it was about delayed gratification. What they did is they put a marshmallow in front of a 4-year-old child and told them if they didn't eat that marshmallow in 5 minutes, they would get 2 marshmallows. So guess what happened? The kids who ate the marshmallow, when they followed them a few years later to check in on how they were doing, did worse in their SAT tests. So my 2 little boys are screwed for the future. So on the subject of early childhood education, let me show you how all of this works in context. Sylvan Learning is the brand leader in early childhood education, tutoring services, all of that sort of thing. And they were under immense pressure. Why? Because of new players in the market, YouTube, tutoring, all of these kinds of things. And they'd undergone a brand refresh and update so that they could focus less on the remedial aspects of tutoring and much more on the proactive and more progressive aspects of tutoring. They built an extensive content strategy and engaged in social media. Where we came in was taking all of these activities, these brand assets, and taking it down to the local level. Why? Because that's where their consumers were, the mums and dads. Also, this is a franchise organization with 800 locations around the US and Canada. So we took all of these assets and we built it out. So this is an example around DC, where we took these brand assets and we built out content in a very specific, deliberate, brand-compliant way, unique content from one page to the next for all of these different locations that they serviced. And not just 1 page or 2 page, but 7,000 pages of unique content, all rendered perfectly, whether desktop, tablet, or mobile. What's interesting here, I don't know if you can see this, but you might notice the different phone area codes. These are local numbers. Here's a little tip. We moved from 1-800 to tracked local numbers, all still terminating at the same place. Conversion rates went up 25%. That is consistent in every program we run because it's about human psychology and people not wanting to end up in a call center in India. So we built all of that content, and then we optimized the Maps channel, as I was talking about before, not just inside of Google, but inside of YP, Yelp, Facebook, and all of these kinds of things, because it's really critical to what they do around the physical location. And then we built out campaigns at scale. So paid search campaigns, for example. We took a national buy, which was being spent in an extremely inefficient way, and localized and hyper-localized this. So even within this one area, depending on where you are around the DC area, you're going to see completely different creative assets, which are all brand compliant, but have all got localized messaging around the physical location of that center. And we didn't do this 1 time, 100 times, 1,000 times. We did this 2 million times in 6,000 campaigns on a flat budget. This is the really important piece. We then attacked the upper funnel side of things through very, very targeted social campaigns. using their CRM databases so that we could segment messaging to lapsed students and parents as opposed to net new students and parents. And again, maintaining those paths of relevance all the way through to the destination environment and segmenting it in a very, very geo-local way. Every year, this program has been getting more and more efficient, and this is all on the backs of localization and hyper-localization of an existing brand message. And it's not just about the revenue. This is where the long-term planning comes in. We have amplification of the brand promise in consumer minds, increased ability for local parents to connect with the brand, greater value to the franchisees. I can't tell you how important this is, by the way, for a franchise organization, where now they're not getting the franchisees complaining to them and asking them, what have you done with my money? And then finally, a considerable increase in performance. So that's the little story that I wanted to talk about today around localization of that brand promise in order to drive performance.